Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Today's subject, I think, is going to be a short one. So short that I probably don't really need my little notepad here. My notepad that I hold every time I talk about whatever the day's subject is. I guess I'm just holding it out of habit because I like to hold it. So here I am holding my notes, but I may not need to refer to them very much because I want to talk about the Supreme Court, specifically something that Clarence Thomas said, which I'd been waiting for a long time for a Supreme Court justice to say, which is why Clarence Thomas is probably my favorite justice. In fact, I could say that he definitely is. Used to be between Thomas and Scalia. Scalia, unfortunately, is no longer with us. So, Thomas, you get center stage. What he's talking about is something, well, I guess I have to generalize a little bit because this is a strategy that the Democrats have, which is they do it both through legislation and through the Supreme Court. Most recently, they did it with Obamacare. The idea that they understand that they will be in and out of power, but unlike conservatives in legislation, they have a long-term goal, which is basically to socialize the country and to increase the power of the government. So what they'll do is they'll move in incremental steps. They'll enact some piece of legislation, but it will be a piece of legislation that gives some free stuff to somebody who then will not want to lose their free stuff. The point being that as time goes on, the Democrats, when they're out of power, they can be confident that whatever they did when they were in power will not be reversed. And when they come into power again, they can just add to what they did before. That's how we've gotten this giant welfare state that began in 1932 with the election of Franklin Roosevelt. Well, actually 1933, if you want to be technical, because 1933 is the year that Roosevelt, FDR, actually took office and was able to implement his programs, which are still with us today. And that's my point. Once these programs get enacted, it's hard to overturn them. Take a look at Obamacare. As I said, that's the latest example. The Republicans are having a devil of a time trying to repeal it. But there's a second avenue, perhaps more damaging than the legislative avenue, because it's harder to overturn and more permanent, and that's the Supreme Court. One would think that the Supreme Court should be the easier route to overturn the Democratic agenda because you really just need, theoretically, to appoint conservative justices who will overturn bad past decisions. And by bad decisions, I mean unconstitutional decisions. Decisions that are, as Byron White called them, the lone dissenting justice in the Roe v. Wade decision, an act of pure will having nothing to do with the Constitution. Obviously, if Congress enacts a bad piece of legislation, which the president then signs into law, as long as that bad legislation, however bad it may be, is constitutional, there is nothing that the Supreme Court could do. Or that's the way it's supposed to be. Because if you have a liberal justice can very well overturn an act of the Congress that is perfectly constitutional. They can also, as they have done, create new rights that are not in the Constitution. The only solution through the Supreme Court is for the Supreme Court to reverse an earlier bad decision, a bad constitutional decision. The problem is the Supreme Court rarely does this because of a principle called stare decisis. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this term before, stare decisis, which is Latin for let it stand. In other words, the way it works in the practical world is if the Supreme Court makes a ruling, the Supreme Court or a future court is loath to overturn that ruling because, well, it's a fair point. We need stability in our lives and stability in our laws, and you can't have a decision being reversed and reimposed and reversed and reimposed with each changing Supreme Court. But Clarence Thomas recently wrote that the Supreme Court should look at decisions that are obviously, blatantly, clearly unconstitutional and overturn those decisions. I could not agree more, because our whole system of government is getting farther and farther away from the limited government or limited federal government that the founding fathers envisioned, because of these Supreme Court decisions that at the end of the day have the same effect as the Democrats are trying to achieve in the Congress, which is to build on each decision, however incrementally, until the Democrats get what they want, because of the reluctance of a Supreme Court to overturn a past decision, however unconstitutional it is. A good example would be the Constitution is silent on marriage, and suddenly making same-sex marriage a constitutional right. That is a decision. Now, if the states want to do that, they should be free to do so, because any power not granted to the federal government, and remember, these powers were granted by the states when the Constitution was being debated and written and voted on by the states. Any power not granted to the federal government belongs to the states or the people respectively. Those are the words in the Constitution. We need to get back to that, and that just reminded me, that's going to be another video about the states and how the states can take back the power that they so cavalierly gave away. All I'm saying for today is I'm glad that Clarence Thomas brought up this issue. I hope other justices, certainly the conservative justices, the so-called conservative justices who are supposed to be faithful to the Constitution, will listen to Thomas and start revisiting some of these old cases if an opportune case comes up to challenge and revisit these old decisions. So I'm going to end now. As I said, this was supposed to be short. I anticipated it being short. I hope it was short. But oh, well, no, I have to go on a little bit longer because I have to remind everybody, if you like the video, thumbs up. If you have any comments, there's a comment section below the video. Put your comments down there. You can also suggest in the comments section a future topic that you would like me to cover. You can also debate with each other whether I'm right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree. If you have a Twitter account, you can tweet out my URL to your followers, either to specific videos or the whole darn channel. And finally, you can subscribe. If you subscribe to my channel, you will learn about a new video as soon as I post it. And that's it for today. Have a real good rest of the day, all of you out there. See you soon. Bye.